Welcome to the second webinar of Dana AI. We are going to speak today on the topic of how AI is really impacting e-commerce industry. Just a quick introduction myself. My name is Hari Story. I'm the founder and CEO of Dana AI. I have been in the AI industry for quite some time, have did my research in Stanford before this, and have been early on at companies building AI products at companies like Lyft, Twitter, and Snapchat. Having been deeply involved in building AI products from scratch, I've also seen how AI can really impact on marketing industry, um, particularly when it comes to empowering brands in the generative AI era. So today we have a very special guest with us, Vishnu Modi. Vishnu has been an industry leader with extensive experience in B2B and B2C marketing. He is actually currently the Vice President of Marketing at I-95 Dev, a marketing agency. And he also heads digital marketing services, where he plays a key role in helping businesses leverage AI for growth. So with no further delay, I would like to introduce Vishnu. And Vishnu, if you can kindly introduce to our audience your experience and background, we can get started.
Sure. Harish, thank you so much for having me. Really glad to be part of this webinar series that you're doing. I think it's really exciting. So, hello everyone. My name is Vishnu Modi. I am currently VP of Marketing at an e-commerce agency, I-95. So we at I-95, we basically specialize in building omni-channel solutions for brands on platforms like Adobe Commerce, Shopify, BigCommerce, and the likes of those. So I currently am responsible for the branding and the lead generation and the demand generation activities for I-95. But I also wear another hat. So I'm also heading the digital marketing services department of the company, where I'm basically, like Harish mentioned, responsible for leveraging all the digital marketing tools, including AI, to see how we can actually help brands grow. So that's a quick intro about myself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vishnu. Fantastic background. So, Vishnu, let's dive directly. We all understand that AI has been making waves, in e-commerce for quite some time. And with this whole advent of generative AI, with all these new tools coming into the market, the chat GPTs, the mid journeys and all that, people are talking about different use cases about from a marketing standpoint, whether it is content creation, whether it is really transforming how businesses interact with their customers. And in this whole thing, Vishnu, given your experience, is generative AI really disrupting the e-commerce industry? And if so, what are some of the early use cases that you are seeing where this is playing an impact?
Sure, Harish. So Harish, I think before we even get started, right, we'll have to give credit to the likes of ChatGPT, right, for basically democratizing, right, making AI part of a day-to-day verbiage and language. So, and the reason why I say that is, see, at least in the e-commerce space, AI has been there for quite some time. I mean, some of the early use cases that we had seen prior to actually ChatGPT and the generative AI and the LLMs became popular, we've seen use of AI in search, right? We've seen use of AI in personalization, recommendations. So it's been there for quite some time. However, what has changed is back then it was in hands of a few people. So all those agents, all those companies, right, the product companies and technology companies, which invested in this, they had an advantage, right? They were probably one of the earlier adopters of it, so they had an advantage. But what the generative AI and the LLMs, right, have basically done is it has basically democratized use of AI. Now everybody and it can actually take advantage of these the underlying AI models, add it to their own use cases in terms of their products and services, and then actually take it to market very quickly. So it is basically in so many ways leveled the playing field for wider adoption. So today, I mean, from those early use cases that we had seen, right, in terms of search and personalization and recommendation, today AI has basically left a footprint across several aspects of e-commerce, right from basically researching your competitors to content generation, optimizing SEO, generating ads, social media, risk management, automation, inventory management. I mean, the list just goes on. You pick any aspect of e-commerce today, AI basically plays a very important role in that.
Very nice. Those are very interesting use cases, Vishnu. Thank you so much for sharing. And you're absolutely right that we have to thank the chat GPTs, the mid journeys, because they really have democratized and helped even a smaller brand can now use AI in generative AI into their day-to-day business operation. That's very interesting. So you mentioned about social media as one of the use cases which play a big vital role in e-commerce industry. Maybe can you talk a little bit about how exactly is this social media playing a big role for engagement of customers? Because e-commerce brands they actually acquire customers through social media. There is no doubt in that. Maybe if you can talk a little
Right.
bit details about how that engagement of social media posts is really driving that buyer to the e-commerce brand.
Sure. Sorry, so let me answer that with a couple of stats that I was looking at, right? See, firstly, if you look at social media adoption, right, there are roughly around 5 billion people on social media platforms worldwide, and that's more than 60% of the global population. So that's one. So social media is deeply entrenched in everyone's life. Two, if you look at the data, right, in 2023, more than 80% of consumers have used social media platforms for discovering new products, for researching new products, and actually buying a product. I mean, that number is huge, right? More than 80%. And the number's only going up. And the third and final status, if you really look at the average spending per buyer in US, and this is more specifically to US region. So back in 2020, that number was roughly around $300.
Oh, wow.
It doubled in 3 years. So in 2023, that number was around $600, and that people are actually expecting it to double from here by 2027. So it's expected to roughly go on to $1,200 by 2027.
It's
So
almost
what
like
that
the purchase
basically
behavior of the customers is shifting.
correct. So, and what really underscores is, I mean, today e-commerce and social media are inseparable, right? For several reasons. Uh, Obviously for the adoption of the platform itself, and to what it also has done for a lot of newer e-commerce brands is it has basically given them an opportunity to compete with larger brands. I mean, see, back in the early days, all the marketing channels that were available for a brand were very expensive. So only brands with deep pockets could actually take advantage of it. But with social media, anybody and everybody can actually take advantage of it and get in front of their buyers. It's there for the taking. So it has basically, again, it has done what we were talking about some time back, right? What AI has done in terms of adoption across verticals. Basically, social media has done that for e-commerce brands in some time back. So it's kind of level the playing field. It makes it easy for people to get in front of the audience and actually create an impact. So you see incumbent players actually competing with some of these larger brands from that perspective. So the role of social media in e-commerce is, I mean, it's deep, and I'm sure you've also heard of influencer engagement, right? I mean, that just takes the whole engagement to a very different level.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, definitely social media is playing a vital role for purchase decisions. So I think from a marketer's perspective, so obviously these marketers in e-commerce, they have to really think hard on how to leverage a technology like AI, for example, into their day-to-day, operations, marketing operations, and all that. So what do you see or envision? Because like how would the marketers inside this e-commerce industry, what are some things that they would love to have? Hey, AI, please solve this problem for me. What are some of the things that come to your mind?
So yeah, I think firstly AI. So let's look at a couple of things, right? See, one is just with AI, right? The FOMO, the fear of missing out is huge, right? So it doesn't matter if there's a use case. Brands today want to adopt AI. Brands today want to be associated with how they're actually taking advantage of AI. That's one. Two, given that, and given the number of startups that are actually coming up in the space, right? We also have to be conscious that decision making is also becoming increasingly difficult for these brands because there's just so many tools today that decision paralysis is actually very real. So, see, in keeping that in mind, right? And again, we all know that marketing is a multifaceted role, right? There's just so many different levels to it. Let's take social media as an example, right? And if you really break down the whole social media engagement, you basically start with, let's say, research, right? You're basically trying to understand who's there in the market, who's for the space that you're in, right? Who are the influences in the market, so on and so forth. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, if you're already there on the platform, what's working for you? What are the upcoming trends? How is the engagement for your posts like? So on and so forth. So that's another level of analysis which goes into it, right? So on the basis of this, you basically then form a strategy. So that's the third component of it. Then based on your strategy, you then focus on content generation, and then you then focus on basically driving engagement, community building and engagement. So I mean, just for social media, we can basically break it down into 5 different levels. So research, analytics and insights, strategy, content generation, and engagement. Now, AI can actually have an impact at, at all 5 levels, right? But again, for obvious reasons, strategy is something which brands would like to keep close to themselves. So we're probably not there yet where people would start using AI to actually drive their strategy. But when it comes to research and analytics, AI is a big game changer because if you have to do something like that manually, it's very, very difficult,
It
right?
probably
And
needs
then if you have to use some of these,
quite a number of man hours to do all that
correct,
research manually. It's like
correct,
literally somebody has to sit, eyeball each and every single social media post, probably take notes based on that and all that. So it
correct.
even if it's a human, on an average, I could clearly see it takes like 5 to 10 minutes at least per post.
Right. See, while you've always had analytics tools, right, to actually drive this engagement, the metrics that you could get out of it was probably very superficial. I mean, it would tell you number of posts, it'll tell you the number of engagement, the time of posting, day of posting, but it was only limited to that. But with AI, today you can understand, look, what is the post about? Why are certain posts driving that engagement? And you can do this analysis not only for yourself but also for your competitors. You can do this analysis for what else is trending in the industry. So what you can actually get out by leveraging AI is huge. So research, analytics, and insights is, I mean, AI is a big enabler in at least in those two verticals. And then the final two, which is basically content generation and engagement. See, I think this is a little bit tricky because it how the impact AI has in these two verticals also depends on how brands want to use it. I mean, let's say if brand want to use it as an idea generation tool, right? Something that they can go back to brainstorm with. Wonderful. I mean, there are plenty of examples. There's a very good use case for doing that. If brand basically want to use it to scale their operations, right? So let's say before AI, they would do 2, 3 posts a week, but now you can actually up that engagement to a very different level with a little bit of human intervention. So again, a very good solid use case for that. On the third, and the final aspect of it, right? Let's say if brands want to replace their entire social media engagement with AI tool, while it's possible, again, not something which is basically encouraged, right? Because it also depends on how your customers take it. See, the reason why customers want to interact with the brand, they follow a brand, they engage with the brand, is because they want to feel connected. And if you really get to a stage where you start feeling that, look, no, all of this was just AI generated, it really depends on how your customers take it. Because so that's one school of thought. On the other hand, today you also see a lot of AI influences coming up, right? I mean, today you have social channels and social profiles where all the content is actually generated through AI. So, I mean, and they're commanding and they're fighting with human influences. So, I mean, those are two different aspects of it. So, it really depends on, like I said, how brands, basically brand strategy on how they want to leverage AI, and plus how it really works for their customers in that industry. But I think it's very important to find that balance.
I think we are observing the same thing with our customers of Dana AI also, because I think whatever are these most strenuous tasks, for example, competitive research, or whether it is, like really tracking all the posts, trying to understand what is the strategy so and so influencer is following or so and so competitor is following. We really automated that as part of Ghana AI, and we can see that marketers find it extremely happy with that aspect because those are like strenuous tasks that consumes a lot of human time. And marketers, they might as well focus on the creative aspect, which is like the content finalization, what content needs to go live, and really the polishing part. But the you rightly pointed out on the five important aspects how content is generated today. That research part, the scanning, the tracking, trying to come up with a strategy. These are tasks that are done manually today, which we are also observing the same thing, that customers want to delegate it to the AI.
Right. See, for a lot of brands, because of lack of resources, right, they completely rely on gut for that. So they say, look, no, we've seen certain posts to work well, right? So there's a lot of recency effect which is at play, and they take a lot of these decisions purely on the basis of gut. But again,
So
with
it's
AI
purely
tools,
a
right?
guesswork. There is no such method or process that people are employing.
Correct. So now they can actually back that. So they're a lot more confident with the decisions that they're making. So, I mean, at least in the research and analytics part of it, a big enabler for brands.
Got it. Got it. So on that aspect, I mean, obviously, people in your team must be using ChatGPT, Midjourney, all of these tools. But at the end of the day, these tools are only as good as the prompts. Does marketers really want to be the best prompt engineers in the world and really want to skill that technique, or marketers want to stick to their strengths and want help where things are already done for them, and they are the final people who are involving in the decision maker? What do you see?
It's funny you say that, right? I mean, even for our own company, right, we were actually going back and updating a job description for some of the marketing roles to actually include this. So it's funny you say that. See, but Harish, see, you're right. Marketing is usually being a very creative uh, vertical, right? And it's both art and science from that perspective. And let's accept the fact that the job description for marketers is changing. Having the skills and the ability to actually use this AI tool is a must. Now, obviously, with the flip side of that is it also brings in a lot of unpredictability, right? I mean, there are certain resources. If they're really good prompt engineers, they can actually produce a lot of great quality content. However, if there are certain resources which are still catching up, probably the quality output can actually not be that great, right? And it's a journey, right? It's a skill that you have to acquire. Now, what it does for the brands is it brings in a lot of inconsistency. It brings in a lot of unpredictability. So while it's true, therein also lies the opportunity, right? And probably which is what Ghana current AI is currently taking advantage of, is to bring in some of these specialized tools, right? Which takes away that unpredictability, which takes away that difficulty in terms of learning how to prompt engineer and all of it. So it takes away that aspect of it while you're still leveraging these AI tools to augment your work, but it takes away the difficult component of it. So I mean, it's part of the job description today, but yes, which is also where the opportunity lies for actually brands like Ghana to actually come up.
Absolutely. And that's why Ghana AI, we don't have any prompts in our platform at all, which is what like marketers love about, because they don't want to be the best in prompting. They are very good with the creative aspect. And as you rightly pointed out, that's their strength. Now, because of this whole AI thing, people now need to lift up their skills and add the whole prompt engineering. But eventually, they can't that job description is not like, because prompt engineer itself is a full-time job in many, including companies like OpenAI and all that. That's not the forte that they want to operate. It's part of the job description, but it's not this thing. And that's where we have observed as well from our customers, where they talk about, it's less about they trying to be the best prompt engineer and more about they want the AI to understand their brand in and out. And that's where, the tools like Ghana AI, we have this concept called as brand brain. We build this brand brain from scratch, which is really taking inputs from the marketers. And the inputs are not prompts, but actually like things like, what are your inspiration sources? What are some of the places you go for content? And we start munching all these gigantic amounts of data on the back end. That's very interesting to hear. Thank you. So now the tools are there, like the ChatGPTs, Midjourneys, all Gemini, all these tools are there. Uh, what do you think? Do you anticipate that these tools are enough for marketers to solve their problems? Because at the end of the day, I'm assuming that they want to solve business pain points for them. Or do you think that the so-called tools in the market, the generative AI tools, they're designed for a different use case, but not like deep enough to solve a marketing use case?
Right. Uh, so Harish, see the tools like ChatGPT, Claude, and the likes of those, right, are basically good places for people to start. Right? Everybody wants to get a feel of AI, right? So these are good tools for you to actually get started. And we've used this, right? Over the last several months, we've used most of the LLMs that exist out there, right? You name it, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Copilot, Gawk. We've basically tried our hands on all of those. But what we realized the hard way over the use of the tool is it was good for us to get started. But as we started looking at more serious use cases of for our own brand, right, and for our customers, and one of the things that we actually saw among several things which were actually lacking and which really prompted us to look for additional solutions, right, which are more vertical focused. So, and you've actually named one of them, which is that brand voice, right? That brand consistency that you want to bring in. Now, can it not be done through these tools? It can be, but it takes a lot more effort. So, one of the primary advantages that these AI tools bring for you is efficiency. And now you realize that you're compromising the same efficiency to bring in that consistency, which is where these vertical focus tools, right, can actually be a big enabler for brands. And then we've also seen that a lot of times there are vertical specific customization, right? I mean, for example, if you look at e-commerce, if you want to generate product descriptions for your website, if you want to generate product descriptions for platforms like Amazon, if you want to generate, let's say, descriptions for social media, these are very different things. I mean, what you include, you probably have option to write long form content for your website, but that might not work as effectively for Amazon. And similarly, what works for Amazon might not work really well for social platforms. So these nuances again is something which is not easy to get from these generic platforms. And the final thing again is a lot of times brands also have their own information, right? They have this first party data with them. Now, for them to also take advantage of this, there's always this security aspect, right? Because these tools are not, they're not really apt for using for some of these personalized data.
So there
So
is a
again,
lot
this
of
is
these
the risk.
details that need to be, thought of properly, which
Right.
not like the tools like ChatGPT are providing it off the shelf, but it does take quite some immense amount of work that they need
True.
to probably look into. And I think you're absolutely right, Vishnu, because even when we are working with brands, there is all this concepts called brand guidelines, brand safety, brand reputation. Brands care a lot about these things. These are not like some things that you can just like have a prompt system, like just take it like that, because these have been there for like decades. And I think hence that's where like agencies and brands, I believe they work hand in hand onto this, because there is so much careful scrutiny when it comes to the content that comes out, because it's really representing that brand, and it might cost them a lot of damage if it is not scrutinized properly.
True, true. Just closing thoughts. See, Harish, you as a marketer or as a brand or as a company today, you cannot get away from adopting GenAI tools. I mean, it's imperative, it's mandatory for you to do that for your survival. However, using these tools as an assistant, as a brainstorming tool, as an enabler, and not as a replacement for creativity or storytelling. That's really the key when it comes to marketing. There is no replacement for that. I mean, you have tools doing it, but then the ingenuity that humans bring in is kind of, we're not there yet. And then obviously the use case for automating these repetitive tasks is definitely a big enabler, right? It brings in a lot of efficiency. And again, see, we've seen brands become very conscious of this, right? Ever since COVID, the need for justifying the ROI, right? Being very efficient in terms of not only human capital, but also how people are actually leveraging technology. And again, AI is a big enabler when it really comes to that.
Yep, I agree. I think this has been a really good session, Vishnu. I think before we wrap it up, that I want to quickly ask some of the questions from our viewers who have submitted these questions. So the first question is definitely we talked a lot about how AI is already transforming e-commerce space. How do you see AI is going to play an impact in the, let's say, next 5 years time frame? In your view in this particular marketing space? I think part of it is, do you really see that it'll be headed fully towards a fully automated, but or it will be more like the marketers, they still want to own the human creativity part? What do you see?
See, I think there's going to be a balance of two, right? I mean, you will always find certain brands or certain sizes which would probably want to outsource everything and do everything through AI. But I think bulk of them, so there are two things that are going to happen. Brands are basically going to get more comfortable using these AI tools, and they will slowly start finding their own balance. Now, whether it's 50-50, 60-40, will really depend on each brand's preferences. But I think both AI and human ingenuity as actually, I think, will have a role to play in that. But it'll really depend on those individual brand preferences.
Got it.
But I think we're going to see a balance of both. Neither of them are going away.
Yep. And again, one interesting thing, this question is kind of related to your point. You mentioned that this whole generative AI is really democratizing what is available to a very large brands with lots of resources. Now, this can be actually unlocked even with a smaller brand with a $40 million revenue, annual revenue. So one of the question is that I think it's trying to level set these smaller e-commerce brands to actually compete with the incumbents and the bigger brands. Because obviously, smaller brands, they don't have as many resources as the bigger brands. So what do you think, would you suggest like some practical ways, like let's say a marketer of a $40 million annual revenue company, is there any advice that you want to give to that marketer who are like, should I consider generative AI, or is it something I'm too skeptical? What is an advice that you would like to give as a fellow marketer?
Right. And Harish, I know you've said $40 million, but this is applicable even for brands which are doing far lesser than that, right? I mean, even brands which are getting started. See, so actually, let me put it slightly differently. For brands which are getting started, they have nothing to lose, right? I mean, they're already strapped for resources, so they have no other alternative but to adopt AI. For bigger brands, again, they have all the money in the world. They can invest in all the resources that they want. But again, the brands which are slightly in the middle, right? They don't want to do AI or adopt to AI, right? Because of the fear, but at the same time, they want to compete with these bigger brands. So again, my advice would be get started, right? It and don't worry. The fear of missing out is real, but don't worry about it.
Got it.
But it's very important for you to get started and find your way, right? And find that balance, like I mentioned sometime back. Now, whether you rely completely on it or whether you rely partially on it, but it's very important to find it. If not, it's going to be very difficult for brands to actually compete out there. So similarly, brands cannot afford to be complacent. So whether it be a big brand or a mid brand, they cannot afford to be complacent. So they have to leverage these tools. But yes, it's very important to get started early and find the right balance for you.
Makes sense. Thank you. That's a great advice. So we're going to wrap it up with one last question. So this gentleman is asking, obviously with all the AI generated content tools, it's becoming all this common, more and more common. But there's also this risk that brands might start losing their unique identity. Particularly uh, brands, they care a lot about their authenticity and all that. Um, what can businesses or brands like they ensure that they use AI for efficiency part, but still have creativity and that unique authenticity core to their brand? How do they ensure such things?
See, like with everything else, Rish, see, again, technology can actually be a big enabler at the same time can also work against, right? It really depends on how you use it. And with AI, the efficiency that you find, right? that risk is very real, right? It's very easy to get carried away and say, okay, look, but there's so much that can actually be done. But what you lose in the process can again be might not be immediate, right? You probably realize that somewhere down that. So I think leaders in these companies, as leaders, right, in these companies, it's very important for them to acknowledge this, right? Acknowledge that risk in the very early stages and have these discussions. Because if you leave it to individuals, obviously they're more inclined towards finding that efficiency, right? They might not necessarily have that foresight. So it's very important to discuss these initiatives internally, understand what role it's playing, and educate, right, internally to all the resources of the pros and cons of it. So I think just those two things, right? Basically, using it responsibly, which again brings in the aspect of governance, right, which I was referring to. So it's important for brands and leaders in these companies to actually have these open-ended discussions with their employees and basically educate them on the impact of losing it to AI then, right? At the same time, not using it as well. So there's a lot of resistance I have seen in companies where they don't want to touch these tools yet. But again, we are missing out on a big opportunity by not doing that. So I think it's very important to have these discussions internally.
Absolutely. And I think that's really great. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I think overall, thank you so much, Vishnu. You have really gave our audience lots of good advice, lots of interesting insights for them to think about, particularly generative AI still being in an infancy stage for many, many marketers. It is very clear that businesses can't escape AI. They really need to start early, which is one of the biggest takeaway from me for this from this webinar. And they need to keep adapting and use AI at the places wherever they can find more better efficiency and keep the creativity aspect and empower the brands with their authenticity and their unique brand voice. I think we're going to wrap that session at this point of time. Really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much once again, Vishnu, for speaking to our audience. This is really great. I hope everyone finds this session useful. If there is any feedback or anything, please do send it our way. We'll make the future webinars. We have a lot more interesting speakers lined up that will be coming and speaking in this webinar session. But until then, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Arish. Thank you so much, everyone.